Hi everyone, thank you for attending today's session. My name's Jack Williams. I represent Virgin Pulse in the across the EMEA region. What I wanted to do today is really, talk about employee engagement, well-being, and employee culture, but also talk to you a little bit about strategic well-being, implementing well-being strategies, and sharing some of our best practices. Just to give you obviously a little bit of an idea to who Virgin Pulse are, we provide organisations with turnkey and enterprise solutions to support better employee well-being and engagement strategies. That'll look holistically at well-being, looking at social, physical and psychological health. What I thought I'd do, to start is really looking at what we want to achieve in businesses. We recently launched a State of the Industry report. It looked at asking a number of senior HR professionals across the world what their key priorities were. Number one was recruitment and retention, employee communications, and I want to touch on that in a little bit more depth and how it actually impacts how we channel wellbeing comms across a business. And then the next was employee engagement, employee wellbeing, and organisation culture. I think what it's important to understand is that they all in fact impact one another. Employee engagement, it relies on an inclusive workforce and a healthy workforce. And, it's really important to connect all of this together because it will impact your strategy as you implement it. When we're looking at employee well-being, that holistic approach is again really important. And I think when we're supporting businesses, they may sometimes have a specific focus on promoting better psychological well-being across the business. We've heard that a lot this morning in the first session. How can we improve mental health? But, when you really implementing that strategy, I'd say think of it all as one. Connect all of the dots because they all impact one another. Looking at physical health, psychological health, social health, emotional health and financial health. When we go into support organisations, there'll be a lot of key factors that they want us to actually help support them with. You can see a few of those here. We want an active and productive workforce. We've got a disengaged workforce. People are struggling with sleep. We've got really highly stressed people within the business. We just want to engage them. What I would say when it comes to individuals is that everyone's that their well-being is specific to them. Everyone in this room will have their own well-being challenges. I look at myself personally. I visited the GP at the weekend. Something really simple for me. I can't drink alcohol and I can't drink caffeine for 2 weeks. So that to some people might think, well, that's really easy. This morning I got up in my hotel. I was with my colleague Jill in the audience there, and I said, I really need a cup of tea. I want a cup of tea. And she's saying, you failed straight away. Come on, what's the matter with you? But it's difficult, and any behaviour change is difficult to that individual. And when we're delivering our programs, it's not all around physical health. It's not all about how much physical activity you can do, how many steps you can do. It could be completely different. If I asked any of you in the room today what well-being means to you, I can guarantee you it will be completely different to you. But it was mentioned as well, looking at this value on investment piece. How can we demonstrate a return on investment from the wellbeing interventions that we put in place? If we look at individual metrics, so looking at individual behaviour change, it might be looking at how people can do more physical activity, looking at metrics such as reducing stress levels, reducing BMI levels. They're okay, it sounds really nice, but if we were to go to the board and say we can implement this wellbeing program, all our people are going to do this amount of steps, it's not going to tick the box. We really need to be able to connect all of the data and demonstrate how individual health outcomes have a direct impact on business outcomes. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about some of our data, the insights. I took it from this morning again. You'll have a lot of wellbeing suppliers. They'll all come to you with data, but how do you pull it all together so it can really tell the story and show those measurable outcomes? When we this is going back to the state of the industry report, and we were looking at challenges and roadblocks to implementing engagement and wellbeing strategies. It's probably not surprising for you to see, but budget is the number one. A lot of businesses we meet with, they don't have a specific budget for wellbeing, or it can be quite small. What we'd say is, encourage different teams to get involved in that. It doesn't just come from a HR wellbeing budget. There'll be lots of different divisions, business units where wellbeing really does matter. But it definitely is a challenge. Organisational culture is another. It's changing the culture. It might already be set in stone, so it can be quite difficult to change, and that it can take time to change that. And then thirdly, employee adaptation and participation. How do you get your employees actually taking part in a programme? It can be the best initiative in the world. I've seen a lot of HR benefits, I've seen a lot of initiatives, and I think they're absolutely fantastic, but if people don't use them, they're useless. I was at a recent financial services employee engagement event, and there was a chap from Tesco Bank, and he said something that really stuck with me. It was really poignant. He said that if you want to engage with your people with a solution, give them something that they're going to use inside of work and outside of work, something that they're actually going to find beneficial and utilise. And I think that's a really important factor. Another thing, though, when it comes to well-being, I worked in public health previously. I work with patients, but when I look at the workforce, we're at the work the majority of our life, so that's where we should be actually looking at our lifestyles. That's where we can, in fact, make the biggest difference. So when we, just to give you a bit of an idea of Virgin Pulse and where we've come from as a business as well. So internationally, we focused on a turnkey engagement solution, but a lot of our clients they had a lot of complexities when it came to wellbeing. They had a lot of provision, they had a lot of data, and they wanted to pull it all together. So when working on these strategies, we really wanted to, identify what's going to work, what do you need, and how can we configure our solution so that it does the best job possible for you. A few of these challenges, number one, I'll go back to this utilisation and employee adoption. First and foremost, how do you actually communicate the initiative for people to get signed up to it? But then, how do you keep people using it? We don't want them just using it for a short amount of time. We want them using it throughout the year. We want them to remain engaged within it. Personalisation, personalised so that it matters to the individual themselves. If I said to my colleague Frank in the audience today, Frankie, we're doing this 10k run, I want everyone to get involved, it would be a fear of death for Frankie. She wouldn't want to get involved in that. So we really need to think holistically and join all that, the wellbeing provision up, and provide something that is there for everyone. And then, this psychological, physical and social well-being. Not just, when you position it, I'd say connect all the dots and get your people thinking about these dots as well. I've just been in the CBRE talk then, and the chap was talking about how different metrics of improvement, so how nutrition impacted performance, how psychological well-being impacted performance. But it's down for the individual to think about their health as well and take accountability for it. Think about how your nutrition impacts your sleep quality, how your physical activity levels impact your psychological well-being. That's what we really want to do. You can't, when you're talking about well-being, you can't do it to a person. You've got to do it for them and provide the educational tools for them to be able to change. One of the biggest challenges for me was around communication and how we can identify the best communication channels in a business to be able to get well-being messaging across. So it's normally, email communication. How effective is that? I'll tell you now that email communication is probably one of the biggest causes of my stress. It's just you're getting hammered with emails every single day. It's not the channel of communication that works for me. I'd rather speak to people. I'd rather access something when I want to be able to access it. But then, what have we got available in the business? Is it an intranet page? Is it email communication? Do we have newsletters? What are other business priorities that often leapfrog wellbeing messaging? It can be difficult to get that message across to your people. And then secondly, when it comes to communication, how can we specifically communicate with employees with resources that matter to them? And when I worked with a large bank for a number of years, and we provide insights reports and analytics, and we look at areas of like well-being metrics. So we'll look at physiological health, we'll look at stress areas in the business, where are the hotspots in data. And what the client said to us was, brilliant, you can show us that our people are stressed. How does the individual know that? How can they gain a self-awareness? And what do we need to do about it? So what we really need to do is really find an effective way to channel things that matter to people at the right time as well. So I see a lot of business, you'll know Stress Awareness Day, World Mental Health Week. They've recently been launched. It really does draw awareness around psychological well-being, which is great. You know, it gets people talking about it, it reduces that stigma. But what I would say is that that's okay at a certain time of the year. But what if I'm stressed earlier in the year? I don't know about what's available across the business, so how can I find out about it when it actually matters? And I think that's a key item there. Another really big challenge was segmentation and targeting. And I'll talk from this in two different areas, but looking at segmentation, how can you, we work with like global businesses. A lot of resources aren't available from a global perspective. I've heard a lot about employee assistance programs today. They're generally not available across a global workforce. So how can we segment that? I know we've got benefits pages, rewards pages, and they can break that down. But how can we specifically do it when it comes to well-being provision? Similarly, looking at a more local level, even in London, businesses will have multiple office locations with lots of different initiatives taking place. We don't want to promote them to everyone because they'd be meaningless. We want to promote things that actually matter to people and where they're actually based. The other real big challenge was looking at, you know, I put the point here, driving traffic, but when I say driving traffic, it's really about making people aware of what's already available, not just relying on the navigating through all the different areas in the intranet. You know, people don't visit the intranet every day. It can be quite difficult to navigate, but how can we demonstrate that we can drive traffic to different areas of the business? You know, looking at an EAP again, average utilisation would probably be about 4 to 5% across your whole business, whereas I bet stress levels could be at 69, you know, people highly stressed could be about 60 to 70%. You've got resources there, but people just aren't using them. How can we better drive that traffic towards them? And then education. I'd say education comes from twofold really, but it's not, you don't want to bombard people with too much information. If I, for example, did a self-assessment today and I had high blood pressure, I had high cholesterol, I could quite simply go online, search on the internet how to lower this and how to lower that. Whether I would, probably not, because I've got a busy working lifestyle. But what we want to do is provide education in bite-sized chunks of information, but so that it means something as well. So if I did want to focus on my physical activity, I'm getting educational advice around that. If I'm looking at my financial wellness, I'm getting specific advice around that. But so I can read it on a daily basis and I'm not trying to digest too much. Celebrating success, and this is something really, this is what I'd say is best practice. I forget the chap's name from the Bank of England this morning, but those videos that, you know, they were so emotive. It brings something home. It's something that you resonate with, especially when it comes to psychological health. And I did want to actually ask him a question, was, you know, how do you get that across to your business? What channels do you use? It's so impactful. Show your people it so it impacts them. So I'd definitely say celebrating success is a real big win, but it's just getting it out there. And then 12 months and beyond, it's when you're like implementing these interventions, you don't just want them to work for a few months. You've got to maintain engagement. Look at your wellbeing strategy and have that strategic button-down approach. Don't just pluck out an initiative because you think it's going to work. Pull out on data and insights. Look at what your people actually need and then plan out that strategy so that they're going to remain engaged. Just looking at this chart here, this is really looking at, you know, how many organisations have implemented engagement or wellbeing strategies. And when we and I'll show you in the next slide, but when we go out with business to meet with businesses, they often think, look, we've not got a lot. And I'd say a lot of businesses are in the same place. Not everyone has got that button down strategic wellbeing intervention in place, but it's moving on, especially in the international marketplace. If we look, our head office is actually based out in the US, and those client organisations out there, they are much more evolved. They connect to health insurance premiums, and they've got monetary incentives. We don't really see that much in this space. What we see more so is looking at, how these interventions actually have an impact on those business outcomes. So looking at reducing stress levels, but also employee performance. How can we improve productivity? How can we improve concentration levels as well? So just to give you an idea of when we're looking at the well-being evolution, and I'd just like to point your attention to the axes on this visual. But at the x-axis, we look at usage, and then that moves through to daily usage, and then the y-axis, it looks at value on investment. So what this is really trying to show you is that the more people that you get involved in an initiative, the more it's going to impact those specific business outcomes. If we look at well-being and this well-being evolution, at the start we can see traditional wellness, and this was very much like reactive treatment. People who are already experiencing stress at work, they may need to see a counsellor. Occupational health, you've already got a bad back. It might be looking at campaigns such as Know Your Numbers campaigns. They really do focus on specific health metrics, and you're not really going to engage with a wide population of your workforce because it doesn't really appeal to everyone. We then look at social well-being, and this is where you can really engage with real entire populations of your business, looking at turnkey solutions, something that's not so difficult to implement at your side. That is one of the big challenges. Businesses don't have whole well-being teams. There'll be different pockets. It might form part of the HR team, the rewards team, occupational health team, and comms. Not really a specific team to oversee it, so it can be quite difficult to get these up and running and off of the ground. But what these programs really do look at is getting this teamwork, peer support. The chap at CBRE's just mentioned this as well, and it's that snowball effect. Get people talking about health and well-being and really spread that culture across your business. We then move into more integrated well-being and strategic well-being. I'm going to pull these together a little bit more so. But this is what businesses wanted us to be able to provide them with. It was really a one-stop shop for all their well-being provision, but personalising it to specific individuals and making the data tell a story and really demonstrate that value on investment. It might be, not just thinking about well-being provision, but connecting wider HR benefits. There's lots of different, initiatives and benefits available across the business. People simply don't know where to access them. But then pointing people and recommending people to that resource that matters to them. For example, if I did want to focus on my physical activity levels, I want to know about the cycle to work scheme at work. If I wanted to focus on my psychological well-being, I want to know about all the mindfulness sessions. I'd want to know about the EAP, so tell me that it's there. And then pulling all of that data together and correlating the data. I will touch on this a little bit later in my presentation today, but a lot of suppliers will come to businesses with lots of data and it's just too much. So how can you pull it together, say what it means, and put relevant commentary and a story to it as well? When we're able to do that, that can have a massive impact. And when we look at charts, we look at graphs, we provide insights, reports, and they're not always that easy to digest. What does that mean? What does this mean? We really need to be able to put that commentary to it so that it makes sense, and it makes sense to those senior stakeholders within the business. I will tell you a little bit about our products. I'm not going here to sell the product, but I think it'd be a good idea. But we've got a number of different solutions. We've got Global Challenge, which I'm sure some of you may be aware of. But this is a platform where it's a turnkey engagement solution. It'll really engage with a vast proportion of your workforce and focus holistically. It's a ground-up approach as well. So when everything in Virgin Pulse's programme is all around scientific behaviour change. It's a ground-up approach, so we don't want to provide employees with too much at once. But it'll focus on physical health. We'll provide physical activity devices, teams get together. We then look at nutrition, psychological well-being and sleep. And then we also look into productivity for the individual as well. We've recently internationalised an enterprise software solution as well, which is an Engage product. And this is really an integrated solution, which is really configurable and pulls in all of that existing provision that's available across a business. But I will talk now a little bit about scientific behaviour change and the ethos around Virgin Pulse. When it comes to changing behaviours, you may have heard of a model which has been used a lot internationally, but it's called the trans-theoretical model of behaviour change, and that's something that we work we work towards something similar to that. We've got a scientific advisory board, a chap called BJ Fogg, and he's got a different model, and it's all about simplicity. It's getting individuals to focus on the right behaviour. But make it simple as well, and don't try and do too much at once. When you're looking to change your behaviour, you first and foremost need to have a bit of awareness around it. So you need something to be able to trigger it. And it's not always easy looking from the inside. It's sometimes getting a nudge from the outside to tell you, actually, I should be looking at changing this. But also this motivational piece as well. How do we reward success? It doesn't happen overnight. Behaviour change doesn't happen overnight. I think back to when I used to work for the NHS, and I'd be working with people who wanted to lose a little bit of weight. You don't just drop a couple of stone like that. It's really important to provide motivational tools to help that change and get peer support with that as well. And then this practice and repeat. Habits take time to change, so you've got to continually do them over time until it forms part of a natural habit. And then some of the areas, and I've brought this visualization today, but just to really think about some areas where a lot of our clients are focusing on at the moment. We talk holistically, getting active, eating healthily, sleeping well, reducing stress, being productive. But also think out of the box a little bit as well. How can we better connect well-being across the business? Can we connect it to learning new things, learning development, building relationships? Do we have a social platform where people can actually connect with each other? Contributing to my community, so looking at CSR and charitable events. That's something that I've noticed a lot in this marketplace at the minute. If I look at the US, it's to do with individual reward and incentives. But when businesses are connecting their well-being, it really sits well if you connect it to charitable events or charitable causes. To give you an idea of how we've done that, we configure corporate team-based challenges where individuals can gain points. Those points don't mean anything to the individual from a reward point of view, but all the companies competing together, and then that can translate as a contribution to charity as well. And then what seems to be really high on the agenda at the moment is managing my finances and financial well-being. So with all of these different areas, we want to be able to provide the tools, the educational resource, but also the motivational piece to encourage people to change as well. So how do we do this? We've got to use the correct science. We've got to, all the education, it's got to be scientifically validated, but people have got to have fun and they've got to enjoy it at the same time. And you look at this daily utilisation, and that's something that we're really proud of, that people simply use our application every day because they find it useful. If we look at other benefits, hub solutions, it's probably quite rare that you go on that every day. You're not going to visit the intranet, you're not going to go on your benefits page every day. But we really want to be able to, have a bit of a hook, get people using something every single day, and then direct them to different resource in the business as well. So just looking, and I want to talk to you, or make you aware of some of the data and insights and analytics that we provide, just to show you how you can better demonstrate that value and investment when you're implementing initiatives. What I would say is don't try and do too much. Have that strategic objective from the offset, but have the tools in place to measure in the short, medium and long term. So at the start, you might just be looking at, we want to get our employees engaged in the program. Brilliant, and that'll give you something to be able to measure that initial success. But don't try and do too much. Something that we've worked on recently is human capital management integration. So with the likes of Oracle, Workday, SAP, SuccessFactors, in addition to collaborating with other suppliers and integrating that data. What that actually allows us for is better segmentation and targeting, so we can target specific campaigns to specific employee groups. For example, we might utilise data from the HCM to launch a certain campaign. It might be cervical cancer screening, as an example. We'd only want to be able to communicate that to the females in a business. It might be looking at learning and development for the graduate workforce. We only want to communicate that to that element of the workforce. But what it also allows us to do is integrate data further and look at measurable outcomes. Whether that be integrating data from health screening assessments. What does that data actually mean? How can we then better provide a better employee experience as well? So I'll give you an idea of how that works. But say, for example, I went to, we had a biometric provider within our business. I had my blood pressure taken and I had my cholesterol taken and it was high. What do I actually do about that then? What the other supplier can do is channel that data into our system, and then we'd provide educational advice around that. So it might be a nutritional card, eat more oat bran foods, oatmeal foods, omegas to help lower your cholesterol levels. So it's clever. It's not only thinking about aggregated data at the top to show a business what the health profile is like, but also putting it down to the individual and making their experience better. So there's I don't want to talk too much in depth about data, but I'll give you an idea of what we do. And Frankie, you mentioned this to me earlier when we had a chat out there, but a lot of businesses do employee surveys, and there can be quite good completion rates. But how do you get better completion rates? What I would say is they've got to be employee centric. If they're employee centric, your people will trust them, but they've also got to get something back from it as well. We impart a number of different survey tools within our platform, and all the question sets are scientifically validated. What it will allow the individual to do is really gain a baseline understanding of their own health, and then that improves throughout the tenure in the program. So it might be the heart age score, it might be the lifestyle score, but what it also does is shows them how they've improved throughout time. It'll also be able to demonstrate to the business how their health profile has changed. So we'd launch these at different intervals. That's really important because we've got to demonstrate how effective our intervention is. What are the current stress levels like in a business? What is the psychological well-being like? How many people fall within suboptimal? How many is in optimal conditions? And actually, how does implementing a well-being program impact those specifics? If we look at this current chart here, this would look specifically at employee engagement, and this was for, we'll look at pre and post results. You can see that from the offset, 65% of members said that offering Virgin Pulse made their company a better place to work. And this was a simple validated question set. You can see the first question, people look forward to coming into work, 63.7%. After the program had ended, that was 75%. 5.7%. And you can see that we've definitely had an impact, and those type of metrics are really going to have a big impact if you're discussing those at board level and trying to get budget for wellbeing interventions. And I really like this one, but this looks at longitudinal impact on health. And it was the chap from Bank of England again. The great place to work, but he mentioned that well-being doesn't happen overnight. It can take 4 to 5 years to implement the right strategy, and I definitely say that is right. But if we look at this chart here, we looked at one of our interventions and how we implemented it over 3 years, and it's really, really interesting, and it actually shows us, if you might launch a 10k run or something like that in the business, you're not going to get everyone involved. It's not going to be truly inclusive. When you're implementing health and wellbeing initiatives, you need to make them inclusive so that everyone can get involved in them, not just your super fit and healthy guys. If you're getting the super fit people involved, they're already super fit. It's not going to have an impact on your business. You want to get those health skeptics, those who actually need it involved. So I'll show you just exactly what this study actually and the findings from this study. But we measured those who started the programme in very good or excellent health. We also looked at those who started in average health and those who started in very poor or extremely poor health. So in 2013, you can see that the guys in poor health, they're obviously at the bottom there, they're lower. But then after being involved in the programme, their overall health and well-being scores shot up. They almost shot up to that as the average health category. Granted, what we did find is that then everyone's health profile did drop slightly. They then started the programme again in year 2, and all their health shot up again. And you can see that those in the poor category, they're a lot more closer to those in the very good category. One important piece, though, is that their overall health score never drops to what it was at the start. So we're seeing gradual improvements throughout time. And then after 3 years, those in the poor health category, their overall health is in a very good condition. So it takes time, but it's clear that by spending that time providing to your employees, it does make a big difference. And then psychological well-being. This has been a key thing for the businesses we support. We look at a lot of different resources around that, so we really try to focus on positive psychology. Anxiety and depression are slightly out of scope, but looking at resources around mindfulness techniques, breathing exercises, peer support groups, really helping to communicate those and sharing success stories within the platform. But we clearly see that by people being more physically active, they're eating better, they're utilising resources. 69% of our members reported a decrease in their stress levels, and 42% of members reported suboptimal psychological well-being at the start. So it's clear that there is a need to be able to support that. It's just getting that provision out and making it available to your employees. The final thing for me today is really to share some best practices, and I've made a few additional notes here. But when looking at your well-being strategy or your engagement strategy, really define those specific company goals. Establish a benchmark. Look what other organisations are doing and how you can benchmark against those, and use employee engagement surveys to gain a snapshot. Other things that I would say, and I've made separate notes here, but connect your provision holistically. Don't look at things in isolation. If you're launching a stress management tool or things around psychological well-being, think about the bigger picture. Think about how it connects to physical health, financial health. The next is sharing success stories. Get those out there. That's what's going to resonate with your people. Senior stakeholder buy-in. That will really instill confidence in your people. If your CEO's involved, the managing director, the leader of a business unit's involved, that'll help spread that message across the business. Bring your suppliers together to collaborate. You'll have a lot of different suppliers. It's not always easy. It can be challenging. There might be an element of competition within those suppliers. But if they can work together, that's where you're going to see a lot of success. if you can, you know, when we're looking at integrated email communications or how we channel communications, we don't offer an EAP at the minute, but we want to be talking to people about it because it might matter to them. Wellbeing networks and champions, that got mentioned earlier. Champions, they don't have to just be within a HR function. Spread that across the business. It's people who are who share an interest in wellbeing. But what I would say is provide the right tools for them. Don't just leave them to their own devices. Have scheduled sessions for you to be able to catch up. Share that best practice across the business. In addition to that, what we also see works really well is wellbeing networks, whether that be wellness groups, action groups. They really help cascade that message of wellbeing across the business. And my final point today is, and this has been feedback for me when we've been looking at designing our program, but keep it simple. Don't try and do too much, because that's what if you providing some real complex type of intervention, your people are just going to get fed up with it. And provide something simple that they can use on a daily basis.